During Easter at my parents', my husband was helping clean the attic, then suddenly went pale and said, "Don't react. Wait until your mom leaves." Then I saw what he had found. I didn't cry, I did this. 3 days later, my parents were calling their lawyer in a panic. I always assumed if my life ever changed in a single moment, like really changed, not the haircut kind of change, it would come with a sound cue, a musical swell, a thunderclap, something orchestral. But no, there was dust. There was a stack of boxes labeled Christmas stuff probably. There was my mom, humming along to Michael Bublé like she wasn't standing on top of decades of unspoken tension and family denial. Nothing dramatic, just the slow thud of my heart doing something I didn't have language for yet. The attic looked the same as it always did, like a place where old wrapping paper and unresolved guilt went to die. My dad had mentioned clearing it out like he always did, in that voice he uses when he wants credit for a job he hasn't started. I said yes, like I always do. My husband Daniel offered to help, because he always does. That's his thing, showing up when no one else really notices I'm still there. Mom was sorting a tub of garlands in the far corner, muttering something about mice. Daniel had drifted to the other side, quietly making himself useful, the way he always does when things feel delicate. I was elbow deep in a nest of yellowing extension cords when I realized he'd stopped moving. I looked up. He was crouched behind a stack of boxes, staring at something, not blinking, not breathing. "Daniel?" I said. He turned his head slightly, just enough to meet my eyes. His face was pale. Still. He stood up slowly, crossed the attic, and crouched next to me. His voice was barely audible. "Don't react. Wait until your mom leaves." That was the moment I knew something was wrong. Not just wrong, serious. My whole body froze. Not, "Come look." Not, "You have to see this." Just, "Don't react." That's when my chest started to burn, like my heart had taken a deep breath and refused to let it out. "What is it?" I asked, barely keeping my voice steady. Daniel didn't answer. He just glanced at my mom, still humming to herself. Mariah Carey this time, which somehow made it worse. She was 2 steps to our left, bubble-wrapping old Christmas figurines like they were breakable history. "Not here," Daniel said. "We need her gone." I stood up like I was sleepwalking, walked to the edge of the attic. "Hey, Mom," I called down, trying to sound casual. "Can you check if we still have the vacuum with the hose? Might be easier than the broom." She answered with something cheerful and vaguely musical, then disappeared down the stairs like this was just another Tuesday chore and not the unraveling of my entire life. The second she was gone, Daniel stood and pointed. There was a space behind the insulation, barely visible, like a seam in the wall that someone had tried to make disappear. Boxes pushed in front of it. A folded carpet thrown on top like a blanket hiding a bruise. Daniel didn't touch it. He just stepped aside, watching me. I moved the boxes with hands that didn't feel like mine. There was a cardboard box shoved in sideways. Nothing fancy, just taped shut, the flaps a little loose, like it had been opened recently and closed in a hurry. I pulled it out and lifted the lid. Inside, a folder. Cream-colored. Slightly creased. Neat. Tidy. I picked it up. It felt too heavy for what it was. My fingers were sweating. I flipped it over. My full name was printed on the front. Daniel didn't say anything, but I didn't need him to. I looked at his face, tight, unreadable. And I knew. He'd seen this already. He must have opened it, just enough to understand. Just enough to know I needed to see it for myself. The date underneath my name stopped me cold. 19 years ago. I opened it. Not all the way, just enough to see the header, the formatting, the kind of page that has been printed on purpose. Daniel leaned in and tapped a section with his finger. Gently. I read a single sentence, maybe less. Then I stopped reading. My body didn't move, but it felt like my brain had taken a step backward. The air in the attic changed. Not physically, emotionally. It felt like someone had switched on a light I didn't know was there. My ears started ringing. I could still hear Michael Bublé downstairs, my mom laughing at her own joke, my dad probably pretending not to hear anything. Eventually, I whispered, "We need to leave. Please. Now." Daniel nodded. We folded the folder, tucked it inside my coat like it had always been there, and walked downstairs in silence. My mom was at the base of the stairs, holding the vacuum and asking something about whether we needed the upholstery attachment. "Something came up," I said. "You're leaving already?" she said, blinking like she didn't understand. Like this wasn't just another day of pretending we're all fine. "We'll be back later." Dad didn't look up from his crossword. We kissed goodbye like everything was fine. Daniel smiled like everything was normal. My mom reminded me to take leftovers, because she always does. I didn't hear what she said after that. We walked to the car, got in, closed the doors. I didn't say anything. Daniel didn't ask. The folder dug into my ribs like it had grown there. Something had just come undone. Or maybe something had finally fallen into place. I didn't know yet. All I knew was that this wasn't over. Not even close. I used to think all younger siblings felt like background characters, like our main role was to react to the plot happening to someone else. But then I grew up and realized, no, sometimes the spotlight just genuinely never swings your way. My sister Natalie was born 4 years before me and apparently 400 years wiser. From the moment I had language, I understood that she was the reference point. Everything about me was filtered through her. Natalie liked math. I was more creative. Natalie made straight A's. I had a good attitude. Natalie got a trophy. I got a participation ribbon and a reminder to smile for the photo. It wasn't cruelty. It was subtler than that. My parents, my mom especially, had a way of comparing us without sounding like they were doing it. Like they were just noticing something. Like the weather. And I, being the observant little sponge I was, learned to stop asking for too much space, or attention, or breath. Natalie's life took off like something you'd read in a lifestyle blog and roll your eyes at. She got a scholarship to some competitive business program, one of those ones that's hard to pronounce and always sounds more expensive than it should be. There was a photo of her holding a certificate with her name on it, beaming, Mom standing next to her like she'd just personally handed her the future. After graduation, Natalie launched her own company, a wellness and productivity coaching business. Mindfulness, journaling, digital planners, clean fonts, curated lighting. It had vision statements and Instagram testimonials before it had walls. It worked. Immediately. She got grants, clients, interviews, the kind of traction that made people say things like, "She's a natural," and "Some people are just built for this." And the more successful she got, the more impossible she became. She was arrogant in the kind of way people forgive if they're photogenic and good with a microphone. She started interrupting people mid-sentence, correcting them in casual conversation, throwing around words like energy alignment as if the rest of us were just trying to keep up. She called me cute once for still renting, as in, "Oh my God, that's so cute. You're still in that little apartment, right?" Like I was a rescue dog with a good attitude. My mom was obsessed. Not proud. Obsessed. She didn't just support it. She followed it. She kept copies of the course booklets. She reposted quotes on Facebook. She said things like, "Natalie's changing lives," as if we were all part of a religion and Natalie was the woman on the stage with the mic. She asked how the business was going, constantly. She gave her marketing advice. She read all the testimonials out loud like bedtime stories. She didn't ask me much. She didn't know what I did for work. Not really. Sometimes she got the job title right. Sometimes she didn't. I stopped correcting her around 2019. Natalie didn't ask either. Unless it was in that half-laughing, performative way, like she was including me out of obligation. And then, when I'd answer, she'd nod vaguely, say, "Oh, that's good for you," and change the subject. There was one person who didn't treat me like a placeholder. Sylvia. I was told she was my great-aunt, though she never felt distant like that. She felt close, steady, like someone who remembered things about you that you hadn't said out loud. Her house smelled like lemon soap and old books. She had this glass-fronted cabinet full of teacups she never used and photo frames with nobody in them. She listened more than she talked, which made her the exact opposite of everyone else in my family. She gave me birthday cards with folded bills inside, asked what I was reading, took me for walks and called me clever in a way that didn't feel like filler. Once, in her garden, she leaned down and said, "Maybe this place will be yours one day." I was 7. I didn't know what she meant. I just liked how it sounded. She died when I was 9. I don't remember seeing her sick. I just remember one day she was there, and then she wasn't. After the funeral, my parents told me she'd had debts, that her big house was mostly illusion, that there was nothing left to inherit. She lived big, but she owed bigger, my mom said, like it was wisdom. They repeated it often enough that it started to sound rehearsed. I remember nodding and saying nothing. I remember stopping myself from asking if I could still wear the bracelet she gave me. In the car, I opened the folder. There was no dramatic breath-holding moment, no slow turning of the pages. I just opened it. I needed to see it. I needed something to tell me I hadn't imagined the weight of Daniel's voice when he'd said, "You need to see this." My name was at the top. The date, 19 years ago. It was a trust, created by Sylvia. The documents were legal, formal, embossed with the kind of seals that mean something. The trust was in my name. Sylvia had named Carol and Richard, my parents or so I thought, as guardians and financial trustees. The terms were clear. They were to disclose everything on my 18th birthday. The assets, whatever they were mine. There was also a letter. It was folded between the pages, tucked carefully like someone was hoping it would survive being ignored. I opened it. "My darling Mara, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and the people raising you have decided the time is right to tell you the truth. I pray they did. You deserve to know who you are. My name is Sylvia. You've known me as your great-aunt, but I am actually your grandmother. Your mother, Celia, was my daughter. She died when you were still very small. Too small to remember her, but not too small to be remembered. After Celia passed, your Aunt Carol and her husband Richard took you in. They are Celia's half-sister and brother-in-law. They raised you, and for that I was grateful. But it was my wish, clearly stated, that you be told the truth when you turned 18. You were not born to them. You were born to Celia, and to me. I set up this trust so you would have a foundation, something your mother didn't have, something you could build on, a future that belonged to you. I hope it has been honored. I hope they showed you this on your 18th birthday as promised, and I hope, more than anything, that you have not lived your life feeling second. With all my love, Sylvia. I just stared at the paper, the signature, the words, "You were not born to them," and felt my entire life tilt sideways. Daniel sat beside me, quiet, still. I folded the letter slowly and placed it back inside the folder. Then I just sat there, breathing like it was a new thing I had to learn. The lawyer didn't blink when I showed him the folder. He just nodded slowly, like this sort of thing happens more often than people think, and said, "Okay, first thing we'll do is file a formal demand for accounting. They're legally required to provide a full report." Daniel sat next to me, quiet, one hand on my leg. I didn't say much either. I just nodded. I felt like I was learning how to exist again, but underwater. The letter went out that week. I imagined it landing on their doormat, tucked in a tidy envelope, the return address typed in black ink. Very official, very polite, a ticking bomb disguised as a question. They didn't call me right away, not until the second day. My phone lit up at 10:14 a.m. Mom. I let it ring once before answering. Her voice was sharp from the first word. Are you serious? Not hello. Not what's going on. Just pure, immediate offense. You're suing us? She hissed. After everything we've done for you? I didn't answer. She continued, louder this time. You ungrateful little girl. You wouldn't even exist if it weren't for us. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was familiar. The volume, the shift in tone, that particular brand of maternal righteousness that always made me feel like a loose wire. Mom, I said flatly, don't call me that right now. Behind her words, I could hear movement. Footsteps. I pictured her pacing in the kitchen, cordless phone in one hand, rage in the other. I wondered if she was still wearing that apron with the lemons on it. We took you in, she said. We raised you. We paid for your food. Do you know how much it costs to raise a child? And this is how you thank us? It wasn't yours to pay with. There was a pause. Just long enough to know I'd hit something. Then Richard's voice cut in from the background. Tell her we'll fight it. We're not letting her destroy everything. They were on speaker. Of course they were. You're not a victim, Mara, Carol snapped. We did what we had to do. It wasn't that much money. I will see how much when the accounting comes in, I said. She scoffed. Oh, please. You think this is going to fix you? You think getting a few dollars makes up for being a miserable little... I hung up. Daniel watched me from the kitchen, leaning against the counter, arms folded. He didn't ask what she said. He didn't need to. Later, I caught myself thinking the words Mom and Dad again, out of habit, like my brain hadn't caught up with the truth. I stopped mid-thought. Carol. Richard. I don't want to call them Mom and Dad anymore. Not after what they did. Not after what they took. But it's hard to untangle 30 years of language from your mouth. Harder still to do it from your memory. 2 days later, they showed up. No warning. Just a knock at the door, sharp and familiar. When I opened it, they were both standing there, smiling like nothing had happened. Carol held a Tupperware container. Cookies, probably. The kind she made when I was sick or quiet or taking up too much space. We thought we'd talk face to face, she said. Like a family. Daniel stayed in the next room. He trusts me to hold my own. I let them in, because I wanted to see what they looked like when they lied in person. Carol sat on the couch and started talking immediately. Words like misunderstanding, overreaction, dramatic. Richard just stood with his arms crossed, like he was waiting for someone to tell him he was right. You're blowing this out of proportion, Carol said. It wasn't some crime. We made choices. As parents. You weren't supposed to make them for me. Don't get smart. I didn't answer. You've always been sensitive, she said. You always needed everything spelled out for you. Maybe if you'd asked more questions. When I was a child? She rolled her eyes like I was being impossible. We didn't want to traumatize you. You were so fragile back then. Richard spoke for the first time. We gave you a life. I stood. Where did the money go? Carol blinked. What? The trust. Where did it go? Silence. Did it go to Natalie? Carol's jaw tightened. You think we're going to stand here and justify every choice we made for you? You mean the choices you made without me? You weren't ready, she snapped. We used it where it mattered. So it did go to Natalie. Richard stepped in, voice low and final. It went to someone who deserved it. That was it. That was the moment. I didn't say anything else. I opened the door and waited. They stood there for a second too long, as if daring me to flinch. "You're not our daughter anymore," Carol said. "Hope you're happy." She left the cookies on the table on her way out. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a message to my lawyer. "Proceed with the suit. Include Natalie." Daniel didn't ask what happened. He just poured me tea and sat down across from me like he was going to stay as long as it took. They offered me a deal, $150,000 wired directly if I dropped the case and let this whole thing go. Their words, not mine. It came in an email. No greeting, no apology, just numbers and the softest legal threat you can write in 12-point font. Daniel read it first and slid the laptop across the table like it might bite. "That's more than enough," the message said. "You didn't earn it anyway." There was a line at the end I kept rereading. "You were never the ambitious one." Cute. I didn't respond. 2 days later, I saw Natalie's face on my screen. It was one of those women to watch videos. Filtered lighting, tasteful bookshelf. Just the right amount of eyeliner. She was being interviewed in her office, or at least a room designed to look like an office and not a branded shrine to herself. "No one gave me anything," she said. "I built this business with grit, with failure, with persistence." I watched in silence. She smiled like she believed it. "If you want something," she added, "you have to earn it." I closed the tab, called my lawyer. "We're going all the way." Natalie called me the next morning. I didn't answer. She called again. By the third call, I picked up. "What the hell is wrong with you?" No hello, no warm-up. Just Natalie, spitting fury down the line like she'd been rehearsing it in front of a mirror. "You're dragging my name through the dirt. You're obsessed. You always have been. Okay. You don't get to ruin my career because you couldn't build one yourself. Ask Mom and Dad where the money came from." Silence. And then, not silence, worse. "Yeah," she said. "I found out." "So what?" "The scholarship paid for school, but it was still a competitive program. I earned my place. The grants helped launch the business, but that didn't build my ideas. I did that. It was just money. It doesn't mean I'm not successful." I didn't argue. I let her hang up. The court date came faster than I thought it would. I didn't go to every hearing, just the one that mattered. The judge was a woman with silver hair and no time for emotion. My lawyer walked her through the trust records, the bank statements, the transfers, the shell accounts, the payments marked scholarship fund that went straight into Natalie's tuition, the marketing budgets labeled business grants that came directly from my name. It was all there. Paper trails don't lie. Natalie's lawyer tried the sympathy angle. She was a child. She didn't know. But the records showed she'd known for years. Known and stayed quiet. Known and still said things like, "No one gave me anything." The ruling was clear. The business was to be liquidated. The assets, what was left, would go to me. Carol and Richard were responsible for the rest. They didn't speak when the judgment was read. Carol's hands stayed perfectly still in her lap. Richard just stared straight ahead like he was watching a fire he couldn't put out. I got the transfer 2 weeks later. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Enough to start over. Enough to take a breath without wondering what I was missing. The rest came later. Quiet gossip. Messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. A short article buried on page 6 of the local paper about a personal decision to shut down the company. No interviews, no retraction, just gone. They sold the house. It wasn't public, but I found out. Word gets around when a pillar of the community downsizes to a modest rental 2 towns over. Natalie moved back in with them. Apparently, she's recalibrating. which is rich, considering that's what she used to call her $399 online course for people who'd just been dumped or fired. I got a final message, an email from Carol. The subject line was blank. The body said, "You've destroyed everything. You were never one of us." I deleted it before Daniel could read it. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I take out the letter from Sylvia. It's creased now, faded in one corner, but I still read it like it might say something new. Not because I'm looking for closure, just because it's the only thing in this whole mess that was meant for me. I haven't told anyone what I'm doing next. I don't think I need to. The truth is, I don't want to build anything right now. I just want to stand still and finally feel like the ground beneath me is mine. I never thought I'd feel this calm. Not after everything. Not after courtrooms and bank records and old family photos turned into evidence. But I do. Carol and Richard haven't reached out since the judgment. Natalie hasn't either. I'm fine with that. The peace is louder than the silence ever was. We moved. Smaller house, bigger windows. Daniel cooks more now. I laugh more. I got the money. All of it. The business, the accounts, the emergency fund that was never meant for me. Even the $150,000 they once offered to make me disappear. I took that too. I thought I might feel guilty. I don't. They lied to me. For years. And that money was supposed to be mine. Now it is. I don't know what I'll do with it yet. Travel. Write. Maybe just sleep without clenching my teeth. I found one of Celia's friends, Marisol. We had coffee. She showed me pictures and told me Celia was wild, creative, and head over heels in love with me. That's all I needed to know. There's nothing unfinished here. I have what's mine, and I'm finally, completely standing in it. Did I go too far, or not far enough? Comment below and subscribe.